Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. So I'm back for another Roscoe's recap for the latest viewing party, which was for season 15 episode 3. You can watch the full video on Roscoe's channel, I'll put a link in the description. The guests for this week were Irene Dubois and Princess Poppy, who both competed on season 15. And as I've previously said, I'm unable to use any actual video clips from Roscoe's due to copyright reasons. Today we're going to be talking about why Poppy would never go back for All Stars, Orion's story slamming Irene Dubois on Twitter, and Poppy denies faking her COVID test for Drag Race. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. Please note that because we're going to be talking about the outcome of certain episodes of Drag Race, there is a spoiler alert in place for this video. So, first of all, host Batty Davis asked whether Poppy and Irene keep in touch with their castmates, and Irene said that she was friends with everyone and the cast are all good friends and there's not really any drama. Then Poppy said that there is drama with Robin and Amethyst on Twitter right now. This is referring to the fact that Robin and Amethyst said during Untucked that they used to date but then they broke up, and there was some contention between the two of them as to who initiated the breakup. Anyway, Irene then said, quote, "I don't need these C characters doing main character bleep." And Irene compared it to Star Wars when the Ewoks have their own movie, but really you just want to get back to the Jedis, implying as though Robin and Amethyst are not the main stars of season 15. And this then led to a conversation about Irene bringing the drama on the season, and the hosts said that Irene should have stayed on the show because she was entertaining. And Irene made the point that she's a drag queen and that what she says is exactly what queens say to each other off camera, but a lot of them choose to not say shady things on camera. Host Naysha Lopez then asked Irene if Luxx Noir London was still mad about the 40-inch wig thing. Just to explain, in episode 1, when Luxx came into the workroom, she said her wig was 40 inches long, and Irene said that it wasn't, and they compared wig lengths. And people started discussing this issue on social media, and it became a bit of a joke. Irene said that apparently Luxx was bothered by this, and Irene said, quote, "I wish she wasn't," but Irene explained that they did talk about it off camera and they are fine now. But Irene said that because no one else was bringing the drama on the season, that's why the show decided to really showcase the wig drama in the premiere episode. They then moved on to the main challenge of episode 3, which was the acting challenge to create an infomercial about the queer afterlife. When asked what they thought of this challenge, Poppy said she hated it and said, quote, "Well, gay heaven, they're running out of ideas." Poppy also said they were given less than an hour to write the script before they had to go film it, and the producers also made them change lots of stuff right before they went to filming. Poppy then mentioned Jax's team. You may remember that in the episode, the team were having some disagreements about the concept of the challenge, and at one point Jax made Sugar switch places with her at the table to stop Sugar talking so much. Poppy explained that Jax's team was, quote, "at each other's throats," and Poppy also said that what they showed on TV wasn't that bad, but in reality they were, quote, "screaming at each other behind the set." They then talked about the runway for that episode, and the category was Metallica, and Poppy addressed the judges' critiques that her outfit was too simple. Poppy showed an image of the outfit that she was supposed to wear, but said that the designer didn't consult her while making that outfit and made it out of non-metallic material. And when Poppy said it wasn't right, the designer refused to remake the outfit. So Poppy just had to wear a backup outfit, which is what you saw in the episode. Poppy also implied as though the designer made costumes for other queens for that week's runway, but prioritised them over Poppy. And Batty then asked how many suitcases they brought to Drag Race, and Poppy and Irene said you're allowed to bring 8 suitcases. Which I thought was interesting because in previous seasons, the contestants were apparently only allowed to bring 5 or 6 suitcases, so this rule seems to have changed. They then moved on to the lip sync between Poppy and Amethyst, and Naysha, as well as some others, agreed that Poppy should have won the lip sync because she was funny. Poppy said that she was, quote, "heartbroken" when she lost, and said that she was keeping it together on camera, but when the cameras cut, she was crying so much that multiple producers had to come over to console her. Batty then asked Poppy if she would ever do All Stars, and Poppy immediately said no. Poppy elaborated and said, quote, "The filming process was the worst thing I've ever done in my entire life." She explained that she isn't the sort of person that does well in reality TV competitions, and she said, quote, every single aspect of filming I hated. Poppy also said she was sort of relieved to be eliminated because, quote, they're constantly poking and prodding you, and she said that it just was all too much. They then talked about the set where they film Drag Race, and Irene said that the set is in the middle of nowhere and they have big tarps over the gates so you can't see in, and it's all very secretive. And Naysha said that the reason Drag Race started filming in the middle of nowhere is because in the older seasons, around season 2 or 3, the contestants once left to go to Starbucks and they ran into Michelle Visage at Starbucks. And that's why the show started sequestering the queens in their hotel rooms, and security is now a lot tighter. Naysha then asked whether Irene and Poppy will post photos of the outfits on Instagram that they didn't get to wear on the show. And Poppy said she hated her outfit for the ball, and explained that season 15 was filming around the same time as DragCon LA, which meant that all the good designers were prioritising making outfits for the queens for DragCon. And so Poppy said she ended up getting a cheap outfit made for the ball, but she hated it and said that she's glad she got eliminated before the ball so she didn't have to wear it. They then started discussing filming Drag Race post-COVID, and Poppy said that she actually caught COVID 2 weeks before filming, and even though she didn't have it anymore, the test was still showing positive. So apparently, Poppy read online that if you put lots of chapstick up inside your nose, it makes the test show as negative, which is what she did, and she ended up being allowed on the show. And Irene made a joke that Poppy infected everyone on set. However, after the Roscoe's episode aired, Poppy must have received some critical comments about this online, and she tweeted saying, quote, I've gotten a few comments about what I said at Roscoe's about my COVID test. Can't believe I have to clarify what I thought was a funny story, but I was not positive with COVID. We were required to take PCR tests to go on the show, but they can show COVID in your system for months. Poppy then went on to explain in a series of other tweets that she had done rapid tests, but they were all negative, but the PCR tests kept coming back positive. But she consulted with the show and many doctors, and they agreed that she didn't actually have COVID, so she was allowed to go film. And she also said that she would never endanger the health of the other contestants. However, she has since deleted several of the tweets. Irene then talked about her talent show number from the premiere episode, where she made a glass of iced water and it wasn't well received by the judges. Irene explained that she did it for the producers during the rehearsal and they all laughed, and Irene also said the contestants were laughing while she was doing it during the talent show. But they apparently edited out the laughs to make it look like no one was laughing. And Poppy backed her up and said that the contestants were actually laughing, and implied as though the editors made it look more awkward than it actually was. Poppy then talked about her talent show number and said that although in the edit they showed people laughing during her performance, no one was actually laughing. But Irene disagreed and said that she was laughing so much that they had to cut. But Irene agreed that the judges were apparently, quote, staring daggers at Poppy during the performance, and Poppy thought that she was going to be in the bottom that week because of it. And Poppy added that the contestants were basing their laughing off the judges. So if the judges weren't laughing, the contestants weren't laughing either, regardless of whether it was funny or not. Batty then brought up the fact that Irene had mentioned Naysha Lopez during an interview and asked why Irene did that, implying as though it sounded shady. Just to give some context, the entire cast of season 15 was doing a press interview with Joey and Pat from Out and About. And at one point, Irene was handed the microphone and she said, quote, Naysha Lopez also won Miss Continental, and then there was a bit of silence. And it seems as though Batty and Naysha didn't understand why Irene had said that. Irene said she was happy to explain what happened and said that one of the interviewers had said to Sasha Colby earlier in the interview that she was a former Miss Continental winner, so was there any point in the other contestants competing on the season because Sasha was clearly going to win? Irene said that it made everyone uncomfortable in the interview, including Sasha. And the reason Irene mentioned Naysha Lopez is because Naysha also won Miss Continental, but she went home first on her season. So winning Miss Continental doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to win Drag Race. Naysha said that she wasn't offended and said she understood the point Irene was making. And Naysha also said, quote, shame on the interviewers for asking such a stupid question like that. They then went on to the audience Q&A, and someone asked Irene and Poppy whether they think Amethyst is being kept in the competition because the producers want to push the storyline of the previous relationship between Amethyst and Robin. And Irene said she doesn't know how the producers are thinking, but she said that if that's what they're planning on doing, then, quote, they're making a bad choice. But it's not 100% clear what Irene meant by that. Another audience member said that they feel like the judges are being quite harsh on the season so far and asked if Irene and Poppy agree. Irene said that if you compare season 15 to the earlier seasons, like season 3, then the judges are actually really nice. Irene went on to say that the judges, quote, used to be so effing rude. And Poppy also gave her opinion on this and said that because on season 14 there were so many non-eliminations and that everything was so positive, the judges on this season wanted to be more, quote, cutthroat. Poppy also said that on season 14, the judges were apparently telling everyone that they're special, and then Poppy said, quote, alright, calm down, your Orion story. Everyone laughed, but Poppy said that it was just a joke. And the hosts joked that Orion was in the audience, and then Irene said that Orion was, quote, not booked, and implied as though Orion doesn't get work. And it appears that Orion did not take very kindly to this. After the Roscoe's episode aired, Orion's story tweeted saying, quote, not trying to sit there and say I'm not booked. Girl, sit down with your ice water, you sound dumb as hell. And host Batty Davis, who said to Irene during the viewing party that she was friends with Orion, responded to Orion's tweet and said, quote, yup, that's what she said, I told her not to go there. And Orion responded saying, quote, like girl, take your 1 episode paycheck and make sure not to spend it all in one place. And someone else commented, referring to Irene, saying, quote, I love her, let's tear down other queens because I don't have a shtick. And Orion replied saying, quote, that's all she does. Irene eventually commented on Orion's tweet and said, quote, I promise I meant it as a joke, I'm sure you're very busy. And Orion replied saying, quote, Poppy's joke was funny, yours was just a malicious comment. You've been very negative online towards a lot of queens and it's not the tea. Orion also said that she heard that Irene had been making jokes about her in the dressing room at Roscoe's before the viewing party started. And Irene said that she didn't have any negative feelings toward Orion and it was just a joke, and she said Orion is entitled to how she feels. Anyway, back to Roscoe's, and Naysha said that when Adore Delano left All Stars 2, after she was upset by the judges' comments, it made a big change in the way the show treats the contestants. Naysha said that the show now needs to be more careful with how they speak to the queens, because if the queens decide to leave, they can't make the show. And Adore was really the starting point for this. Another audience member then asked when Irene and Poppy found out that the episodes were being reduced from 1 hour to 40 minutes. Irene said that they only got told a week before, and Irene was really annoyed because she thought she would have 2 episodes, but then found out that they were combining episode 1 and 2. And Irene said she called her producer and was really annoyed, and then said, quote, they don't tell us bleep. And finally, Irene said that when MTV made the decision to reduce the episodes from 1 hour to 40 minutes, the show had already been filmed and MTV hadn't really consulted with production about it. So the Drag Race editors then had to struggle to try and cut the footage down into the 40-minute slot, which meant that a lot of storylines got cut out of the season. So there you go, there was a recap of the Roscoe's viewing party for RuPaul's Drag Race Season 15 Episode 3. What do you think of Season 15 so far? And what are your predictions for the rest of the season? Let me know in the comments. Please make sure you like, comment and share this video as it really helps support my channel. And of course, please make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay up to date about new uploads. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join me again in future videos. Thank you, bye!